Tonight, we begin in the forests of Ontario, Canada, with a decision that's shaking the global economy. Ontario has banned all exports of its softwood lumber to the United States. This isn't just a trade spat, it's a shock to one of the world's most integrated economic partnerships. The fallout is immediate supply chains disrupted, prices soaring, and uncertainty spreading from Florida to California. For decades, free trade has connected our economies. Now, Ontario's move signals a reversal. If Canada and the US can break down over lumber, what does that mean for other global partnerships? The North American market is in chaos. Global lumber prices are spiking. American buyers are scrambling for new suppliers, while European and Asian markets brace for competition. Businesses everywhere are left guessing about the future. A new home, a piece of furniture, even the paper you use, all are affected by this single decision. It's a stark reminder of how interconnected and vulnerable our world has become. If you're building or renovating, expect costs to rise. If you work in construction or transportation, your job could be at risk. This isn't just a Canadian headline. It's a crisis that will touch lives and wallets across the US and beyond. The story is about more than timber. It's about economic stability, political trust, and the future of global trade. We'll break down every angle of this crisis for you tonight. Stay with us as we explore how a single provincial decision could reshape the world economy. The stakes are high and the world is watching. Let's dive in. The Ontario-US lumber trade is over a century old, built on shared resources and mutual need. Ontario's forests have long supplied the wood that built American cities and suburbs, supporting jobs on both sides of the border. But this partnership has always been fraught with conflict. At the heart of the dispute, fairness. U.S. producers claim Canadian lumber is unfairly subsidized, allowing it to undercut American prices. This has led to recurring softwood lumber wars, cycles of tariffs, legal battles, and uneasy truces. Agreements have come and gone, but the core issue, Canadian pricing, remains unresolved. The most recent softwood lumber agreement expired in 2015, leaving the door open for renewed tariffs and tension. Since then, the U.S. has imposed duties. Canada has fought back in court and at the WTO. The constant battles have worn down both sides, especially in Canada. Frustration has boiled over, setting the stage for Ontario's drastic action. This ban isn't random. It's the result of decades of unresolved tension. The lumber dispute is a recurring wound in U.S.-Canada relations. Each flare-up leaves deeper scars, making compromise harder. Ontario's move is the culmination of years of frustration and failed negotiations. It's a bold step, but one rooted in a long, bitter history. The question now, will this be the crisis that finally forces a lasting solution, or will it deepen the divide between two of the world's closest trading partners? The stakes have never been higher. The world is watching to see what happens next. Let's look at how Ontario's decision unfolded. The announcement was swift. Ontario Premier Danielle Fournier declared an immediate total ban on softwood lumber exports to the U.S. The move stunned markets and politicians alike. Fournier called it a direct response to the latest round of U.S. tariffs, saying Ontario would no longer let its industry be battered by endless trade litigation. Enough is enough, she said. Ontario's forestry sector needs stability. The timing couldn't be worse for the U.S. Construction season is peaking, and Ontario supplies nearly 40% of Canadian lumber shipped south. Billions of dollars in trade halted overnight. Trucks stranded, sawmills scrambling. Ontario's government says the U.S. trade remedy system is broken, allowing repeated baseless tariffs. The ban, they insist, is a defensive measure, temporary until a fair, stable agreement is reached. But the disruption is massive. Thousands of Ontario jobs at risk, U.S. builders facing shortages, and border crossings thrown into chaos. This isn't a minor dispute. It's an economic crisis triggered by a single, bold decision. The ripple effects are immediate and severe. Ontario's stand is about economic sovereignty, but the cost is high for both sides. The U.S. housing market is reeling, and Ontario's forestry sector faces an uncertain future. The government promises support, but the pain is real and widespread. The question, how long can either side hold out? This is brinkmanship on a continental scale. The stakes, billions of dollars, thousands of jobs, and the future of cross-border trade. The world is watching to see who blinks first. The crisis is just beginning. What happens next could reshape North American trade for years. Let's examine the economic fallout. The numbers are staggering. Here's what's at risk. The economic shock was instant. Lumber futures soared over 30% in hours. U.S. homebuilders warn the ban could add $15,000 to the price of a new home, threatening millions of Americans' dreams. Ontario's gamble is huge. Its forestry sector supports 150,000 jobs and over 140 communities. Sawmills are shutting down, workers face layoffs, and relief packages may not be enough. The transportation sector is hit hard. Thousands of trucks and rail cars now sit idle. The ban severs a critical artery in the North American supply chain. Inflation is a looming threat, as rising lumber costs ripple through everything from homes to furniture to shipping pallets. Central banks are watching closely. The fallout could affect interest rates and currency values. This single trade action is creating complex, damaging problems for both nations. The pain is spreading fast, and the stakes are only growing. The economic bleeding is real, and it's not just about wood. Let's look at the political fallout. Politically, the ban has ignited outrage in Washington and division in Canada. U.S. lawmakers demand action, caught between supporting local builders and siding with domestic producers. The White House calls the ban aggressive and unwarranted, but options are limited and risky. In Canada, Ontario's premier is praised by some, but Ottawa is scrambling to contain the fallout. Other provinces fear U.S. retaliation could hit all of Canada. The dispute is straining one of the world's closest alliances, making cooperation on other issues harder. Protectionist voices are growing louder on both sides. The risk, a cycle of retaliation, and a breakdown of decades of cooperation. Leaders must find a way to defend national interests without destroying a vital partnership. The path forward is uncertain, and the stakes are enormous. Behind the headlines, real people are hurting. In Northern Ontario, sawmill workers like Tom Bouchard face layoffs and uncertainty. "This job is all I've ever known," Tom says. "Now the mill is shutting down. I have a mortgage and 2 kids. I don't know what we'll do." In Georgia, the Johnson family's dream home is suddenly out of reach. "Our builder called. Costs are up $20,000. We can't afford it," says Sarah Johnson. "We might lose our deposit and the house." Truck drivers like Mike Patterson, who hauled lumber across the border for years, are now out of work. "I'm losing thousands a week. If this doesn't end soon, I could lose everything." These stories are echoed across both countries. Families, workers, and small businesses caught in the crossfire. The economic models matter, but the human cost is the true measure of this crisis. Political leaders need to hear these voices as they search for a solution. The stakes are not just economic, they're deeply personal. Every day the ban continues, more lives are upended. The pressure is mounting for a resolution. The cost of inaction is measured in lost jobs, broken dreams, and shattered communities. This is the real face of the lumber crisis. The world needs to pay attention. Let's see what the experts say about the way forward. Trade experts warn Ontario's strategy is high risk. Dr. Emily Vance calls it shock and awe. Ontario hopes to force the U.S. to negotiate, but it could backfire. The U.S. might retaliate against other Ontario industries, escalating the conflict. Trade lawyer Mark Warner says a new softwood lumber agreement is the only way out, but compromise will be tough. The U.S. wants export limits. Ontario refuses. A neutral mediator may be needed to break the deadlock. Meanwhile, U.S. buyers are searching for new lumber sources, other provinces, Europe, even South America. But replacing Ontario's supply will be costly and slow. Ontario has leverage, but only for a limited time. Prolonged conflict would hurt both economies. The integration between the two countries is too deep to let this spiral out of control. The key question: how much damage before leaders return to the table? The outcome is uncertain, and the stakes are enormous. This is brinkmanship at its highest. The world is watching for a breakthrough. The ban's ripple effects are everywhere. Pallet costs are soaring, making shipping more expensive for everything from groceries to medical supplies. U.S. paper mills, reliant on byproducts from Ontario sawmills, face raw material shortages. In Canada, a lumber glut could drive down building costs, but devastate the forestry sector. The precedent is dangerous. Ontario's move could inspire other regions to disrupt trade in energy, electricity, or more. The integrated North American economy is suddenly vulnerable to local politics. The consequences may last far beyond this dispute. The Ontario lumber ban is more than a trade dispute. It's a test of trust between two old friends. The risk of escalation is real. A cycle of retaliation could inflict lasting damage. The first step must be de-escalation and a return to negotiations. A new comprehensive softwood lumber agreement is needed, one that addresses U.S. concerns and respects Canada's sovereignty. The human cost, Lost jobs, broken dreams must not be ignored. Leaders must look beyond short-term politics and focus on shared prosperity. The choices made now will shape North American trade for years. Will this crisis drive the nations apart or force a lasting solution? The future hangs in the balance. We want to hear from you. How has the lumber ban affected you? Join the conversation on our social channels. For CNN, I'm Anderson Cooper. Good night.